right. I'm sorry. We're going to do something a little bit different today. And, well, it's not really different. It's what we normally do. But I'm going to work on a little Santa we have here in Whittling. And we're going to talk again about Let's Talk Carving and some questions that are being asked about carving. So we're going to do two things. We're going to whittle and we're going to discuss some wood carving ideas, in other words. Now, I did something a little different. This is just one of those little old world Santas is all. That it's about 4.5 inches high, and it's a excuse me, it's about 1 3/4 inches wide. So we're gonna work on that while we talk. And as I've told you, my teachings now are going to be more speaking about wood carving and not so much on necessarily how. We're going to carve, but we're going to talk about carving too, more than that, concerning the situation we're in right here. Now, what happened is it was very interesting. I feel the Lord put an idea in my head about the certain form. Usually I ask questions, or I get questions from people, and I ask them on Let's Talk Carving what to do, and then they answer the questions, in other words. But this time, this particular time, I had an open forum that I think is a very good idea, where members themselves could ask their own, could ask questions themselves and get answers to them. So it turned out real well, and I'm going to present some of those questions to you that they ask, and we're going to talk about those particular questions while we whittle on this Santa here. In other words, and of course it's getting close to the holiday. It's not quite Christmas yet, but when it's almost November, so it is quite close to Christmas, getting there. And we're going to whittle. I'm going to get my Allen Goodman knife out here, and we're going to whittle on this thing a little bit. So all right, well, I'm going to look at one of the questions we have here, which is a very good question by Terry Burnside. And it says, do you like to stick to the same type of carving, or do you like to try different styles, sizes, materials, tools, etc.? For example, do you gravitate toward caricatures, prefer realistic bird carving? Do you like flat plane carving, wood spirits, and green men or women? Or do you like to try different styles and different subjects? Okay, we're gonna talk about that while we whittle on this this Santa, and kind of bring him to a little bit of a time here. Okay. Do you like different styles? That's the question that we have here. Do you care for different styles? Do you care for different well, as a new carver, I can understand if a person pretty much wants to stay in the same. Now, you're going to choose as you begin to carve. You're going to choose the style and the way that you want to carve, okay? That's just the way things are. But as you, I don't suggest that at first, as you begin to whittle, as you begin to carve, as you begin to work with wood, that you stick with one subject at first and stay with that subject. In other words, if you want to do caricature carving, then stick with doing some simple caricature carvings at first. I think most carvers, when they start, they pretty much have an idea of what they would like to do, or what they would like to carve. Now, I'm not saying that they won't change or won't like to do something different, but I think that a carver has to first begin to kind of master what they really are interested in first before they would move on to another form of carving. And I just think that's a reasonable way of looking at wood carving itself. Remember that when a person first starts carving, it depends, like I said, it depends on who you're talking to, wow, got a bad spot there in that carving. It depends on who you're talking to. It really does. If it's a beginner, I would suggest that a beginner begin and he stay with the same type of what he wants to work on. If he wants to do relief, then start on relief carving and then work your way into doing something else after you kind of master. I'm not saying, when I say master, where you think you're good enough to get to that particular place. Now, it says realistic birds and stuff like that. Now, those type of things, they take a whole lot longer than just a character. They do. I mean, men who do realistic birds, realistic faces, those type of things, like Alex Lacasse, for instance, that takes a little bit longer to learn. So with each part and with each time, we have to understand that it just depends on the person who is doing it. That has a great bearing upon how a person looks at their piece. So you just have to consider the source of what a person or who it is that is doing it. Once a person has sort of done a caricature and he feels good about it, he feels he's comfortable with it, he feels that he's that way, then if he wants to go to something a little bit different, yeah, he can do that. But I would suggest a newbie to take his time, learn as much as he can about what he's interested in, and then from there you can go to other things and do it. It's kind of like when you go fishing. If you've never fished before and you go to fish for bass, I think it's best to kind of learn something about bass fishing before you go on to deep sea fishing, okay? And that is extremely important, because with everything, experience is a necessary piece that you have to learn to do what is necessary for the what you're learning. And that itself is extremely important. So often in today's world, people want instant success. They want things very, very quickly. They want to learn things so quickly because we live in a world like that. We live in a throwaway world. We live in a world that we want to learn real quick. We don't want to have to take the time. We don't want to do those things. Well, you can't do that in carving. You can't. Maybe that's why carving is not as popular to young people as a lot of other things, because you can't rush through a lot of things. You have to take your time. You have to learn and understand what's going on. And when you do, then you have to do it. And you have to do it several times. I remember Doug Winker talking about the fact that before he would do a video, he would do a piece maybe 4 or 5 times before he felt he was comfortable with it. And that's what I'm talking about right there. You've got to have all right, on this Santa, we're just working on the right here. We're working on the arm that holds the bag back there. And so, you know, as a newbie, as a beginner, now if you've been carving a while and you have successfully completed and are satisfied with your work, then yes, there's no problem there that you can do that. So yes, I would say definitely definitely that's what we have to do. All right, let's go on to another question, another answer. Oh gosh, there's 74 comments on this thing. We're not going to get into all the comments and stuff like that. All right. Let's see what else they got here. I'm sorry. All right, my question is on finishing a piece. I dipped a carved piece in BLO, which is bowl linseed oil, then let sit dry until painting with watered down acrylics. Once the paint is dry, I brush on a watered down acrylic polyurethane and I'm done. I hear that you can use Howard's feed in wax to provide extra protection. What finishing routine do you use? Okay, and what he's talking about is after the carving is over with, what is your finishing technique? Now, this is a question that if when asked, how you finish, and we've talked about that a little bit. How you finish a piece is entirely up to you. Now, some people get better results by doing their own way. Now, BLO, which is bowl linseed oil, a lot of you have heard of it, a lot of you have not. Bowl linseed oil is very good for carvings. A lot of people put a certain type of oil on their carvings after they finish it, before they paint it, of course. It's usually put on before the paint, let it dry. Now, it takes a while to dry, so remember about bowl linseed oil. I used to use bowl linseed oil with a mixture of burnt umber, and I would put it on the carvings afterwards, but I stopped doing that because of the danger of using bowl linseed oil. One of the things I want to explain, bowl linseed oil is good, but it is extremely dangerous. You have to keep it in a container somewhere, and you have to be very careful because it is extremely flammable. Now, let me tell you a story, and I do not want to scare any of you in this sense. When I was using bowl linseed oil, I didn't understand the characteristics of it as much as I should have. So I had some issues that came with it, and I would often put the bowl linseed oil, and then I would brush it. I would take paper towels or something like that, and I would, rub the bowl linseed oil off of it. Now, one of the things that you have to learn with bowl linseed oil is that because it is highly flammable, you need to be extremely careful with the whatever you get it on, a rag, anything like that. And what I did, not realizing exactly what I was doing with the bowl linseed oil is the fact that I used it, and then okay, I'm gonna put his hands in his pocket over here. I used it, and I took the rags and I put them in my garbage can. Well, my garbage can was outside, and it was an extremely hot day, and I didn't understand the properties of bowl linseed oil at that time, and I put it on my trash can. And next thing I know, my neighbor comes over there and she says, "Hey, your trash can's on fire." And I went out there, and sure enough, the bowl linseed oil, the rags from the bowl linseed oil was on fire. My trash can was on fire. And so I put it out, and I realized, of course, when I took everything out, that that's what it was. It was the rags themselves had caught on fire. So bowl linseed oil is very combustible. And what I should have done, I blame myself for it, because I feel that I should have done a little bit more research on it. That what I should have done, and I did afterwards, all the time after that happened, was to, after I would take the rags from the bowl linseed oil and dip them or put them in water, soak them in water before you ever put them in your garbage can or anything, like anywhere where there's heat, because they will have the tendency to combust. They will. So you want to be extremely careful with bowl linseed oil. Now, it is very good. It you know, it gave me a tone that I liked, but I just decided I did not like the combustion. I did not like how you know, so I stopped using it. I just, instead, I used burnt umber mixed with acrylic water. Excuse me, acrylic burnt umber mixed with water, and get pretty much the same effect as I wanted. So you want to be extremely careful with bowl linseed oil. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just telling you to please be careful with this stuff, because it is extremely flammable, and that you have to understand that the stuff is really, and most of the time what you have to do is you have to grab on. Now, this is the bag back here, so I'm just going to do this with that bag. I'm going to come around and do this and cut this in the back. Actually, it's more like, there we go, more like that. So you just want to be careful with it, that's all. I was stupid with it. I did not understand the properties as I should have, which I should have done some research on, but I did not think about what, you know, that it was that flammable, but it is. So you want to be sure to keep it, you want to keep it cool. You don't want to let it allow to get out into the, like a garbage can like I did, and let it flame up on you, because it will do it, believe me. It is very flammable. All right, let me see. Let me go to another. All right. My question is, I would like to try oil paints, but I'm scared about drying time and then getting paint smears. Do those that do this, do you add dryers? If so, what kind? I don't use oil-based paints, but let me kind of see here for a minute. Oil-based paints and acrylics okay, I coated my pieces with beer oil, then oil paint while it's still wet, like the end result, and it dried quicker. Okay, some people have used BLO, which is boiled linseed oil. Some people have used other things to help the drying pattern. If you are willing to use oil-based paints, then you're going to have to be concerned about the drying time, because there is a long drying time on oil-based paints. It's not, I myself, I don't like to use any oil-based paints. It's for the drying and also for I just feel that the cleanup too, all that stuff is part of what we have to do to use oil-based paints. I tried one time, and you can use them safely. People that have used them, of course, for art and things like that. Now, I want to tell you something, okay? I'm going to tell you a story about an artist, a very great artist, who was known worldwide, and he used oil-based paints. And of course, that was oh gosh, the guy that painted on TV. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of his name. He's the guy that Bob Ross. Bob Ross. He would paint on TV, and he was just a wonderful, wonderful painter. And people loved Bob Ross. They just loved him to death. But a lot of people don't know. I saw his obituary, not obituary, but his life story one time, and it was unusual. You really want to be cautious when you're using oil-based paints, because that's what he used. And Bob Ross died of a form of cancer, a form of leukemia type cancer, or lymphoma. It was a blood type cancer that Bob Ross had died of. And they had done some investigating on how he might have died of this cancer. And they feel that they have pinned it down. And I'm not trying to get gory here, folks. I'm really not trying to get gory here. Okay, we're working on that Santa as we get this done. But what they think possibly happened is Bob Ross, of course, when you use oil paints, you can't use water to thin them down and stuff like that. Well, Bob Ross used a solution to, after he would work with his paints. If you notice, of course, you probably didn't notice on the TV because they didn't show it, but he would dip his brush after he used one color into this solution, this like, for instance, paint thinner solution that he was using, and then he would dip it, and he would kind of, to dry off the end of the brush, he would sort of tap it on, I'm not exactly sure what he was tapping it on, but he would tap it on something to get his brush to dry so he could put the other paint on it, in other words. Well, according to his biography, Bob Ross died of a blood cancer. And I don't know if they were particularly sure, but they feel it did have something to do with what killed him. And that was the fact that when he would brush off this paint thinner that he was using, he would smell it, or the smell was in the room and stuff, and he used it a whole lot. And they feel that over the years, eventually, that smell and being around that paint thinner gave him this blood disease that eventually gave him this form of cancer and killed him. Now, I'm not saying exactly if that was, but they did mention that in his biography. If you've ever seen, I don't know if Netflix or one of those has his story, that is something that he did, and that's something that they was almost sure had something to do with the type of blood cancer, because this type of cancer was associated with this cancer was associated with that type of paint thinner that he was using. It had sort of a benzene type base in it, and that's what they assumed possibly had something to do with him getting that type of blood cancer. Now, I know that people will go back and forth and say, oh, well, that's just not true. That couldn't have been it. That couldn't, but you don't know. I mean, I've worked around chemicals most of my life, and yes, it can. I'm sure it can have something to do with it. I recently had a friend pass away of leukemia, and he not only worked out there with me, but he had a pest control business. And many of those pests back there a long time ago, those pest control solutions they used were had a lot of high content of benzene and things like that in it. So, and he used a lot of that. And they're almost sure that was what led to his form of leukemia that he had. So I'm not saying yay or nay, okay? I'm not a doctor, so I can't for sure say that this was what happened and everything. I'm just telling you that that it possibly could have something to do with it. So, but anyway, that's what I read in his thing. So, we want to be careful with oil-based paints, and be careful if you're cleaning up. Be sure and wear gloves. It's like anything else, folks. If you know, I do a lot of weed eating, and I do a lot of weed control sometimes, and everybody knows of the big lawsuit that was against Monsanto for Roundup, and there was a ton of people that supposedly caused this type of disease, leukemia type disease, by getting blood cancers who used Roundup in large quantities. These were people who used a lot of Roundup and stuff like that. So I'm just saying that be careful with oil paints, because not with the oil paints, but with the cleanups, in other words. And I do know that drying time for oil paints are very, very long. It's not like acrylics, you know, it don't soak in and then you just go right over to do whatever. Now, oil paints do give a carving a beautiful look. I'm not going to deny that. They do. They do give a carving a beautiful look. But I just don't want to fool with the mess. I'm sorry. I'm just the kind of guy. Maybe I'm lazy and no good. But I just don't. I like to stay with acrylics. I think you can get the desired look with an acrylic also just as well. But you know, who knows? I mean, who knows what to do. So, and like I said, I tried using oil paints one time. I did not like it. So, all right. The next question comes is, do you use stones or sharpen your blades? If so, the grit you use and whether they are diamond or whetstones. Now, there has been an argument a lot concerning what people use to sharpen with. And I like sandpaper. I like it. I like to use sandpaper whenever I want to just sort of, I strop most all my blades. Everybody knows I strop 90% of my blades to keep them sharp. But sometimes you might drop it or whatever it is, and I prefer to use sandpaper, just flat on sandpaper, and high grits like, grits like 700, 1500, those type of things. Now, it's hard to go down to the store and just buy those grits, but you can get them from different supply houses and woodworking places and stuff like that, where you really get the things. I like when I use sandpaper, I like to use like the 600 grit, 700,000, something like that. What I start off with usually is a 600 grit, and then I move to when I feel like I got my knife, kind of in good shape. Then I'll move to the say the 800 grit, and then move to the 1000, and as you go down, and then I strop. I like to use sandpaper. I am not very good on a whetstone. I have never, even my pocket knives, I didn't use a whetstone all that much. I just didn't. I always use something a little bit different than a whetstone. So I don't know. I am not that familiar with whetstones all that much because I just did not use them. But I know they had some diamond stones they used to make that were really good. They were real good brands, and they would really sharpen a knife. But once again, we're talking about, and this is where people get the wrong idea. As you can see, this is a flat ground blade, very flat. When I strop it on my power stropper, I lay it flat down and do this, come to the other side and do this. Now, if you're using a pocket knife, you're going to have a bit of a bevel on it, but most carving knives don't have a lot of bevel on them. I think Flex Cut does have some, and you want to try for that. But I like to use these knives. I like to use knives that are flat for the type of carving that I do, and I love to do them. So I don't use stones. I just don't use them. Now, he also can be talking about your V-tools, and some people, do use stones for V-tools, and that's fine. You know, stones were the original thing that people sharpened with. That no matter what, they were sharpening stones were the first thing that people used to sharpen. Especially over in Europe, carvers over in Europe, they use stones to sharpen their tools with, and that's good. That's a good thing. But I just don't care to use that stuff anymore. And all right, we're slowly getting there. So I'm just not into using stones all that much. And all right, here's one. I want to stain and varnish a carving made from tupelo. Should it be sealed before staining, and with what? In other words, this is something that a lot of people talk about is, should my wood be sealed before I paint it? Should it be sealed? Should it be this or that? What should I put on it before I and we discussed that. There are several things. Some people use BLO. I use, after I do a carving, I use a little mineral oil on it and let it dry, just to kind of seal it a little bit. I myself don't feel that a carving necessarily has, basswood has to be sealed all that much. I really don't. I use that mineral oil and it seals enough. I don't have to have it sealed all the time. And you know, I just don't feel that I have to have it sealed. And you know, it's just, I just feel that it's not necessary to have it to seal the wood. Now, it depends on what type of carving, and it depends on what type of wood you're using. Now, if you're using a grainy wood like pine or something like that, yes, I feel that the wood does need to be sealed. I really do, because there's so much grain in pine, and doesn't need to be sealed. Yes, because I'm going to tell you something. If you don't seal pine and you start painting it, it's going to soak that wood up like crazy. Excuse me, soak that paint up like crazy, and you're going to have some issues with it. That's for sure. And so yes, you can, but like I said, I seal it with a little mineral oil. People use a tung oil. People use different types of oil to seal it, and I think, to me, that is perfect. You don't need to seal the wood all that much. Now, some people disagree, but like I said, I work in basswood mostly, and basswood I don't have to seal. But if you're working with certain types of grainy wood, yes, you do have to seal that wood, or it's going to soak up that paint, and you're not going to get the desired effect that you want. But now some people just basically don't seal it. Now, when I get through with my carvings, I do seal them as far as I use a def spray to seal them, and that's what I use. I use a def spray to seal them, and you know, I think that is perfectly fine, and it works good. It works good for me. Now, some people don't find that to be a good answer because they like to use something else. So once again, these are questions a lot of times that you can have more than one answer to, and I want you to understand that. In carving, It's like sharpening, okay? There is not one way necessarily to sharpen. There can be many ways that obtain sharpening. There are many ways that simply obtain a good sharpening finish on something. And you can reach it several ways. You can reach it by simply stropping. You can reach it by using a stone. You can reach it by using just sandpaper. You can reach it in many, many ways. So these are questions a lot of times that have more than one answer. And if you're a person that, oh, well, there can only be one answer, then you don't need to listen to any of this stuff because this is just not true. There are many ways to get to something. You know, when you're climbing up to the top of something, you know, sometimes there isn't just always one way to get up there. There can be many ways to get up there. So you need to understand that there are many finishes that go along with that. Okay, let's see. Let's try something else. Okay. All right, let's see. There's some more. Hold on. Let me get some more questions that we can discuss for just a minute. All right, this guy asked, what types of wood are best for relief carving? Now, I don't do a lot of relief, and there are quite a few woods that people can do relief carving on. I mean, most any wood would be good for relief carving. I mean, relief carving, there are just wonderful types of wood that people use. Now, there's a guy on Facebook. His name is Ron, I think, Kimyam. Anyway, he does these. He used to do things for Disney, and I had talked to him several times. And I mean, he does. Oh gosh, his work is beautiful. He does relief pieces for Disney, and he's done. In fact, I think the what's the Disney thing with the bears, the bear hold down or whatever it is. He did the sign for that that Disney piece. He is just brilliant, and one of these days I'm going to show him as a featured carver on Let's Talk Carving. It's Ron Kinman, I believe is his name, and just beautiful work of Disney, and he has done that kind of work for a long time. And so he told me what he uses is this stuff called Gelatone. He had wrote me one time and asked me, he said, Gene, do you need know anybody that needs some Gelatone? Now Gelatone is a Malaysian wood. It is very, very hard to get a hold of. But it is beautiful for relief carving. I'll tell you what. I have carved Gelatone. In fact, I have some here in 2-inch pieces. And you can get it, but it is very expensive. You can buy it in 8-foot pieces. And it is very, very expensive. But I think Raymond buys it in large quantities. I'm not sure where he gets it from, but he had these, oh man, I don't know how many board feet he had of that stuff. And he was asking me if I knew anybody that wanted some. and wanted to use for relief carving. And I have some Jayatone over there. Gosh, I've had it for a long time. It's about 2 inches thick, and it's great to carve, folks. It really is. And like I said, he uses it a lot, and on his pieces, and so that. Hey, huh?
You on the phone?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. You need something?
Yes, my tie